Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Celebrate Recovery. I'm a grateful Christian who, at times, still struggles with love, abandonment issues, low self-esteem, anger, and my name is Bob. Glad you guys are here tonight. We are going to do another lesson in our series of 25 lessons that we do throughout the year. Before we get started, though, I'd just like to remind those of you who don't know or haven't heard, we do have another River Recovery service coming up on Sunday. Yeah. It's October 13th, and it's going to be at the Century Theater, which is located over by Bayfair BART. For those of you who don't know where that is, that's in the Bayfair Shopping Mall. And we are going to be meeting at 10 o'clock in theater number 10. If you want to get there a little earlier than that, you can have donuts and coffee, and I think that's about it, isn't it? Oh, and bagels. Wow, we're expanding. That's cool. So bagels too. Anyway, you're really welcome to come, and if you have friends that you think need recovery, somebody who has hurts, habits, and hang-ups and would like to hear a message about that, have them come to the river on Sunday. Really appreciate that. Okay, let's go to our lesson for tonight. Our lesson is called Daily Inventories, lesson number 20. Does everybody have a bulletin package? If you don't, there are some over here on the table. You're welcome to get up and go get one if you like. And there's also another handout that's right alongside of it. It's some questions, self-analysis questions handout. And if you don't have that, you're welcome to get up and get that as well, because I'm going to be referring to both of them tonight as we cover our lesson. Okay, somebody want to help out Reg? Or do you want to just do it on your own, Reg? Okay. Reg is getting surgery on the 24th, right? 24th, coming up. He's going to have both knees replaced. Isn't that amazing? So I've heard of people who have had that done, and all the reports that I've gotten have been great. It's all been good. So we'll be praying for sure for you, Reg, for that. Okay. All right, I'd like you to take your your note sheet out of your bulletin package, please. I want you to find Principle 7, which is located at the top of the page, and it reads, reserve a daily time with God for self-examination, Bible reading, and prayer in order to know God and His will for my life and to gain the power to follow His will. That's Principle 7. As you may remember, we have 8 principles. Rick and Jamie went through the 8 principles a few moments ago. We're on Principle 7, so you can see we're getting close to the end of the program. However, each principle is very important. Each one's a standalone principle, so to speak, and tonight's principle is no different. It's a very, very critical principle. In our last lesson, we took a first look at this principle. And what we did at that time is we talked about quiet times. We said that quiet times consist of 3 activities: Bible study, prayer, and self-examination. And we said that these are essential disciplines. These are critical disciplines that we need to follow. Everybody in recovery needs to follow these disciplines if we're going to make any progress in our recovery program. Tonight we're going to dig a little deeper into Principle 7, this last discipline, I should say, and we're going to be talking specifically about self-examination. Now, in recovery, there's a special name for this kind of self-examination, the kind that we're going to be talking about tonight, and it's called Step 10 Inventory. It's called Step 10 Inventory. Now, this is different from Step 4 Inventory. You guys remember that? We did that several months ago when we looked at principle number 4. Now, the focus of these 2 inventories is completely different. Step 4 inventory focuses on the past. See, the goal in Step 4 inventory is to uncover all the underlying reasons for our hurts and our habits and our hang-ups. And so we go back in time and we examine our past and we look at that in depth. It's a time-consuming process, and it took us quite a while to do that. Now, Step 10 inventory focuses, instead of the past, it focuses on what's going on today. See, the goal is to identify current issues that could potentially cause hurts, habits, and hang-ups in the future. So what we're really trying to do with this kind of inventory is to get ahead of the game. We don't want these issues hanging around and these hurts and habits and hang-ups developing. We want to identify them early on and then do something about them, and that's the purpose of Step 10 inventory. I'd like you to take a look at your note sheet, please. And you can see that there's 3 ways to do Step 10 inventory as they are identified there. The first is the letter O, which stands for ongoing inventory. The second one is D, the letter D, which stands for daily inventory. And the third letter is P, and that stands for periodic inventory. And there are different procedures for each one of these kinds of inventory, even though they all constitute step 10 inventory. And what we're going to do tonight is we're going to talk about each one. So let's begin with the first one, which is ongoing inventory. This is the inventory that we do each day as we are living out, encountering the events of the day. We do this each day. And what we're doing is we're evaluating what's happening. And we are asking ourselves questions as the events come up. Questions like, what's happening now? What's going on in my life right now? See, this is no more autopilot. Most of us operate on autopilot. Most of us just kind of bounce through the day from event to event, circumstance to circumstance. We pretty much know what to expect, or at least we think we do. And so we're on autopilot. So what we do in this case is we're asking ourselves, we're interrupting the flow, if you will, periodically, and asking ourselves the question, what's happening now? And then we ask some more questions. We ask, what am I doing wrong now? What am I doing right now? And what can I improve now? And so on. Those are the kinds of things we do when we do step 10 inventory. And as we do this, we're looking at 3 different kinds of activities. We're looking at our actions, we're looking at our words, and we're looking at our thoughts. Now, I want to talk about each one. So let's begin with our actions. Very simply, our actions are what we do. Some actions are repetitive, like getting up in the morning, eating meals, going to work, and so forth and so forth. Other actions are spontaneous, like responding to people and circumstances and problems as they come up. Really hard to predict those. And then other actions are progressive, like following steps in a plan that we've already implemented. And we just go back and we do step 2 and step 3 and step 4 and so forth. Now, the key in all of this is to monitor all of our actions as they occur. Now, I want to give you an example. Let's say you arrive at work and your boss says, I need to give you a special project. Now, you're already overloaded with special projects that your boss has given you in the past. In fact, it's impacting your ability to do your job. And you're getting very, very frustrated. So you respond by overreacting. And you say something like this, I can't do any more projects. Can't you see I'm already overloaded with everything that you've given me in the past? See, give it to someone else. I can't do it. And you become very, very hostile. That's a good place to stop and do an ongoing inventory. Now, when you do this, whenever you do an ongoing inventory, whenever you stop and you're examining your actions at that moment, I would recommend that you pray through Psalm 139, verses 23 and 24. It's a wonderful psalm. I'm going to put it on the screen for you to see. It says, Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my anxious thoughts. See if there's anything in me that offends you, and lead me along the path of everlasting life. That's really a prayer. You're asking God to do something specific, and it has to do with the incident that you just went through. So you go ahead and you pray through this psalm, in this particular case, because of the problem that I just reiterated. And afterwards, after you've finished the psalm, and then you're praying and you're thinking and you're meditating, you suddenly feel led to go back and talk to your boss. It happens all the time. The solution to whatever the problem is, or whatever the issue is that I am confronted with at the moment, always seems to appear, especially when I've asked God to show me. So you decide to apologize for your response. And you decide to tell him why you responded the way you did, the fact that you're overloaded, that he's overloaded you, and you try to work out a solution. See, that's the value of doing step 10 inventory. It lets you take corrective action at the time things are happening. Things just don't build up. You get a chance to interact and do something about them at the time. Now, the question comes up, do we have to do this for everything that happened to us during the day? That's no. The answer to that is no, because that's not feasible. But what I recommend is that you become aware of key events, things that happen, things that come in out of the blue, like this problem that I just talked about. Comes in out of the blue. Things that come up. And maybe these things will not come up every day. But when they do, start developing the habit of doing your ongoing inventory. Okay. The second area where ongoing inventory is essential is with our words. Now, studies have shown that people use between 10 and 20,000 words a day, depending upon whether you're a man or a woman. So you can see that there are... I really hesitated whether I was going to say that or not. But that's what the studies say. So you can see from this that there are many, many opportunities to say things that may not be very edifying. So we have to be aware of what we say. And more importantly, we have to be aware of how it impacts other people. I want you to look at James 3:2 on the screen. Indeed, we make many mistakes. For if we could control our tongues, we would be perfect and could also control ourselves in every other way. That's an amazing passage, isn't it? James says that if we control our tongues, we would be perfect and we could control ourselves in every way. Now, that sounds pretty far-fetched, I think. But let's analyze. Let's dig into what James is saying here. First of all, the word perfect in the passage actually means mature. That's really the word that should have been used. It means mature. So what James is talking about here is spiritually mature people. And he says they watch what they say. Spiritually mature people watch their language, watch their speech, watch what they say. And then that in turn allows them to control other areas of their lives. That's the point that James is making. And I think he's pretty accurate. When you stop to think about it, apply it to yourself. Really, everything starts up here and then it comes out here. So if you can put a control mechanism on that, it's going to control what happens in your life. So the question then is, how can we use this? Well, we need to take some time to examine our speech. And so let me give you an example of how we can do that. Let's say that I've just had a significant conversation with someone. The key word there is significant. A significant conversation. Now, I'm not talking about every conversation we have, because lots of our conversations are not that significant, as you probably know. I'm only talking about focusing on the ones that are important, the conversations that are important. Now, after this conversation is finished, that's the time to do some self-analysis. So I would ask myself some questions. I'm going to put them up on the screen so you can see. Did I speak the truth? Did I exaggerate? Was I slanderous? Was I edifying? In other words, did I build up the other person? Was I sarcastic? Did I gossip? And these are just a few questions. There's lots of other questions you could ask yourself. Was I godly? And on and on and on. There's many other questions you could ask yourself, depending upon your inclinations. Okay. Now, after the right page here, if I do this, if I get into the habit of doing this, and if I do this frequently enough, I'm going to start thinking about these questions while the conversation is going on. Now, wouldn't that be great? I'm getting into the habit of thinking about how I'm speaking, the impact it has on other people. I'm thinking about how truthful I am. I'm thinking about how godly I am. I'm thinking about the image I'm presenting. And as I think about those things, if I'm aware of those things, then I'm going to start acting on that. Now, let's say after I've done my self-analysis that I see that I didn't do very well in my last conversation. Let's say I wasn't able to meet some of these standards. So the next logical question is, what do I need to correct? Do I need to make any retractions? Do I need to make any corrections? Do I need to make any amends, any apologies? What do I need to do better or differently? Now, I realize that most of us naturally don't do this. See, most of the time we just blurt stuff out and then go on our way. But I submit to you that if we take time to evaluate what we say before we say it, we will avoid a great deal of grief. All right, a third area where ongoing inventory is important is in the area of our thoughts. Now, if you thought keeping track of words is difficult, let me tell you, thoughts are even more difficult. Scientists tell us that the average person has between 2,500 and 3,500 thoughts per day. Not exactly sure how they come up with those numbers, but I'm sure it's probably pretty close to being right. And see, that's a lot of thoughts. And most of them just kind of flit in and flit out, don't they? So the question is, how do we keep track of all these thoughts? Well, Philippians 4:8 gives us some insight to this process, and I'm going to put it up on the screen for you to see. Take a look. And now, dear brothers and sisters, one final thing. Fix your thoughts on what is true and honorable and right and pure and lovely and admirable. Think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise. Now, this is very good advice. I think all of us would agree with that. But the question is, how do we implement it? Once again, it goes back to step 10, inventory. We need to do some self-analysis. So periodically, now I'm not suggesting you do this every time you have a conversation, but periodically you would ask yourself some questions. Things like, do I think about what, my thoughts? Do I think about what's true? Do I think about what's honorable, right, pure? In other words, I'm following the passage. You see that? Lovely, admirable. Do I think about what is excellent and worthy of praise? And do I think about these things consistently? See, that's the key. Consistency is the key. Now, every one of us has honorable thoughts from time to time, good thoughts from time to time, but how much of the time? That's the question. And do I think like this consistently? Now, if I discover by doing this kind of analysis that my thoughts do not meet these standards, then I need to replace them with things that do. See, this is a proactive process. Notice Paul says, fix your thoughts. You see that in the passage? He says, fix your thoughts. That means manage your thought life. Be aware of what you think. Think about your thinking, if you will. Now, to that end, I find it very helpful to have some good thoughts in reserve. Now, these are edifying things that I like to think about that I have picked out in advance. And they could be thoughts about my spouse, about Gail. They could be about my family, about something that I like to do, a Bible verse or 2 or 3 that I like to meditate on, or whatever. I've got these thoughts identified, and I've pretty well figured out what it is I like about them, and they're kind of hanging in reserve. Point is, they have to be edifying. So when I find myself thinking about bad stuff, I make a mental adjustment. I simply say, this is bad thinking. What I'm thinking about is crud. It's not good. It's not edifying. I need to eliminate the bad thinking and put in one of my good thoughts. Now, I know it sounds hokey, but let me tell you, it works. Scientists tell us that 2 thoughts cannot occupy the mind at the same time. So what I do is I kick out the bad ones and I put in the good ones. But I wouldn't be doing that if I weren't monitoring my thought life in the first place. So I would exhort you then to periodically, every once in a while, stop and think about what you think about and analyze, is it good or is it not so good? All right, these are examples that I've just given you of ongoing inventory in the areas of actions and words and thoughts. We have to develop the habit of doing the step 10 inventory in all these areas. And as you know, developing a habit is extremely difficult. See, we have to force ourselves to do the new habit for a while until it becomes automatic. And unfortunately, there is no other way to do it. If there was, I'm sure we would be doing it. All right, let's go on to the next letter. or the next fill-in rather, in your note sheet, which is D, and that stands for the daily inventory. Daily inventory piggybacks on ongoing inventory, the inventory that we've just discussed. So what is daily inventory? Well, it's reviewing our lives each day. And a good time to do that is during our quiet times. See, we look at what happened today, yesterday, past week. That's about it. That's about the limit. And we get this information from our ongoing inventories. That's where we collect it. We're looking for patterns. We're looking for trends. We're looking for areas that need correction. And as we discover these things, we record them in our journals. Now, to help us recall what happened in our ongoing inventory process, because most of the times you were doing ongoing inventory on the fly, if you will, we don't really get too much of an opportunity to record what happens in ongoing inventories. So to help us recall that stuff, we can use the evaluation questions that I handed out to you last week in our last lesson. And I gave you another copy tonight. Everybody should have one of those. So let's take a look at them. And remember now, we're thinking about our ongoing inventory as we ask these questions and what's happened in those in this past week or so. Question is, what did I do today or yesterday that was good? Where did I blow it today or yesterday? Did I do anything or say anything that hurt anyone? Do I owe any amends? Who do I need to forgive? What can I learn from my actions? What are my character defects? And as I mentioned in your notes there, it's hard to be objective sometimes. You may have to ask somebody else for input on this one. Where do I feel convicted? And what do I need to do about the conviction? And what are the motives for what I do? This is very important to look at. Did I have my own agenda? If so, what was it? Was I being selfish? Did I try to manipulate people? Punish someone? Did I hurt someone? Was I threatening? Or was I threatened, rather? Do I feel like I need to be in charge? Do I dislike the other person? Is it just a matter I just don't like this person? Do I feel better than the other person? Do I have a hard time loving the other person? Do I enjoy controversy? Am I jealous? Do I feel like I've been unjustly treated? Am I looking for revenge? Am I frustrated? Do I have a hard time being empathetic? Do I have fears? If so, what are they? Was I under the influence of some substance? Was I controlled by somebody else? Okay, so those are just a general overview of questions you can ask yourself. And as you ask these questions, you'll begin to remember some of the events that happened in the past day or two or three or whatever, and you can write that down in your journal and record it. So let me give you an example of how to do daily inventory. Let's say we're having our quiet time and you're now ready to do the self-examination phase, ready to go into that. So we review our past ongoing inventories, as I just described, and we use the questions, the self-analysis questions that we just looked at. And from all that analysis, we see that lately we have been hurting other people whenever we get angry or frustrated. And we're beginning to see that this is a regular pattern. See, this is what the daily inventory analysis will reveal. So at that point, we pray through Psalm 139, verses 23 and 24. We're asking God to help us, show us what to do, guide us and direct us. And as we do that, we come up with a plan. Always happens. Always happens. I'm meditating, I'm thinking about a problem, I'm asking God for assistance and direction and guidance, and lo and behold, He does. He gives me the guidance I'm looking for. So what we decide to do is to continue monitoring our future conversations. And as we do that, we're going to be looking for something very specific. We're going to be looking for triggers that might cause us to react in an angry or uncomplimentary way. See, triggers are always identifiable if we think about them. If we go back and review events, we can see commonality between events and we can identify triggers. And when these triggers show up, this is in the future now, we're going to pray through Galatians 5:22. I'm going to put that passage on the screen for you. It says, the fruit of the Spirit is love and joy and peace and patience and kindness and goodness and faithfulness and gentleness and self-control. Those are the fruits of the Spirit. So what we're going to do when that event comes up and that trigger is enacted, we're going to ask the Holy Spirit for the fruit that we need for that situation at that time. For example, if it's love, let's say I have to love someone that I don't particularly love, or I have a hard time loving, then I could ask the Holy Spirit to give me the fruit of love for that situation. If it's patience, if I'm finding I'm having a very difficult time being patient with somebody or some situation, I can ask for patience. If it's self-control, let's say I just really want to hit this person in the nose or take some kind of drastic action. And actually, I was in that situation recently. Asking for self-control. And as we ask for that, the Holy Spirit produces it. He always produces the fruit we need when we ask for it. Now, that's our plan. That happens to be, for that particular situation, the situation that I just described a moment ago where we get angry and uncomplimentary. We look for the triggers, and then we see the trigger happening, we ask for the necessary fruit. And this all came about through the process of daily inventory. So now that we have this plan in place and we've recorded it in our journals, we can monitor it in future quiet times to see how it's going. And we can make further adjustments as necessary. Okay. Now, I know that sounds complicated. That seems like a whole lot to do. So what I would recommend is that you study this procedure, identify how it works, figure it out, get to know it, and understand it. And then when you think you've got it, try it out. Pick a situation, in a future quiet time, and try it out and see if it works. Now, you're going to make some mistakes as you do that, but you're eventually going to get it. You're going to get it in place. And when you do, let me tell you, it's going to produce incredible dividends. All right, the third kind of inventory in your notes is the letter P, and that stands for periodic inventory. Now, this is inventory that we perform every 3 or 4 months or so, whatever it is. It can be likened to doing a mini retreat. And so what you do here is you take your journals and all the other materials that you've been using, and you review your daily inventories. For that time period, if it's 6 months, you do it for the past 6 months. And you look for problems that you've identified in past daily inventories. And you look at your plans, the ones that you've made for correction. And you evaluate progress. Simply ask yourself, is my plan working? Has it worked? Have I made any progress? Do I still need to make any corrections? And if so, what are they? And as you identify that, you write it down in your journal. Now, while you do this, of course, you need to pray. Ask God to show you. Ask Him to show you what He wants you to focus on. Not only now, but in the next few months ahead of you before you have your next mini retreat. And by the way, always schedule your next mini retreat. Put it down on your journal. Date, time, place. Okay. Now, if you do all this stuff, if you do this periodic inventory, I should say, it's going to give you the bigger perspective. It's going to give you the perspective of the big picture. See, when you do ongoing inventory, you only look at what's happening each day. When you do daily inventory, you're looking at a little broader perspective, a couple days, a week perhaps. But when you do a periodic inventory, when you do the mini retreat, when you go back and look at your past for that period of time, you're getting the big picture. You're going to get an overview of issues. You're going to see how your plans are working. And you're going to be able to make adjustments. Now, that's all step 10 inventory. Ongoing, daily, and periodic. This is essential stuff. This is stuff we all need to do. This is the way we avoid relapses. Everybody struggles with relapses. If you're struggling with drugs, or you're struggling with alcohol, or food, or whatever the struggle happens to be, you will relapse if you don't put these procedures into place. You have to be evaluating what you're doing, not only at the time it's happening, but over the past week and the past several months to see what's going on so you can make the corrections and adjustments necessary. If you don't do that, you will crash and burn. It's simple as that. This is not an optional exercise. This is something that we need to do. They're excellent tools, great tools, and they'll help you make great progress. So that concludes my remarks for this evening. Thank you all for your kind attention. Let's close with a serenity prayer. Who's still on deck for doing the serenity prayer? Rick? Jamie? Somebody? Okay. Thank you.
Hello. Hi, once again, my name is Jamie. I struggle with depression and codependency, and I forgot to say earlier that I am a wonderful child of God. Okay, everybody say the serenity prayer, please. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardship as a pathway to peace, taking, as Jesus did, this sinful world as it is, not as I would have it, trusting that you will make all things right if I surrender to your will, so that I may be reasonably happy in this life and supremely happy with you forever in the next. Amen.